Welcome, friends, to a very special edition of Sisters for Prevention. So when I was diagnosed 13 years ago with breast cancer, there was one person who encouraged me of a mentor and role model for my advocacy work, and her name is Fonfa. But I'm very, very honored and pleased to have Anne as my guest today. Anne was first diagnosed with breast cancer in January of 1993. She was suffering from extreme multiple chemical sensitivity, which we're going to talk about. She avoided chemotherapy, hormonal, and radiation treatments, using surgery and natural alternatives to survive. The Annie Appleseed Project has presented a lot of information on males with breast cancer and also on the LGBT community. The website has an international section as well. Anne serves on the board of directors of the National Breast Cancer Coalition and has been an active grant reviewer for journals and the Dept of Defense, for which she recruits breast cancer survivors, such as myself. Anne gave me a recommendation to allow me to participate in that project. Anne is well known for moving awareness forward. Anne spoke at events around the world, and she's very proud of her work, as she should be. She doesn't take personal credit for the interest around integrative oncology, but she was the charter advocate member of the Society of Integrative Oncology, whose time is now. Today, many in oncology acknowledge the need and value for exercise, nutritional changes, handling stress, and more. So with that said, I'd like to welcome my very special guest, Anne Fonfa, from the Annie Appleseed Project. Welcome, Anne, and it's obviously indeed a great honor to me to have you on my show. You were the first one that I connected with when I was diagnosed, basically because I was Googling integrative therapy or what I could do to prevent recurrence through diet. And obviously your site was first and foremost pioneer in that area. But you had a lot of challenges, not only with cancer, but with your chemical sensitivity. So can you tell us a little bit about what your cancer journey was like, the first one, and then also how did that complicate things?
Thank you. And I'm honored too. I mean, it really makes me feel good that you found our site and benefited. So I was suffering from multiple chemical sensitivity, which is more or less the disease that has no name. It was never identified by a physician of any kind. I consulted doctors naturally, but my symptoms were that I would smell either personal fragrance or hairspray, deodorant, but it became cleaning products, wet paint, fake wood, glue, shellac, everything like that. And I would get really, really dizzy. And I'd have a headache that lasted, let's say, 2 or 3 days. I'd have to lie down. And so first thing I did was to get green cotton sheets, organic sheets. And that helped. And I would put the sheet over my head and lie in bed, and terrible headache, really uncontrollable. Didn't respond to aspirin. And it just got worse and worse and worse. I had rashes and I had candida, just all these things that were going wrong. And I had no idea why. And I had a friend who was an acupuncturist, and that's the only thing that kept me sane, because she would give me treatment and it would calm down. And she had been a massage professional. So this was prior to my diagnosis of breast cancer. And I was getting treatment for her one day when I came in her office, and I realized that I felt better. And we identified that she had been using a peppermint oil to massage people prior to my arrival. So I realized that peppermint helps me. So I started carrying around a little vial of peppermint oil. And whenever I would have a smell that upset me, I would, and I mean, it's strong, but for me, it wasn't strong. I could just smell it directly without any issue at all. And I carried that around and it helped. But, things were not good. And it was very aggravating. And, it was very hard to get people to understand. So I would say to my husband, oh my God, someone behind me is wearing fragrance. And he'd say, how do you know that? I know because I can smell it. It's making me dizzy. And we'd often have to change seats in a restaurant. I stopped going to the theater on Saturday night. I lived in Manhattan. I had great access to theater. I started going Wednesday matinee. I couldn't be in a room with fragrance. Even if it was a gigantic ballroom size, I could smell it. And I could pinpoint exactly who it was as though it were color. So like, let's say people were saying, who's the guy in the blue shirt? And I'd be going, oh, he's wearing CK1. Oh my God, Anyway, so it was against the background of this that I was diagnosed with breast cancer, which was a surprise. I had been a vegetarian for about 18 years at the time. But like many people, I was a sloppy vegetarian. I was eating Entenmann's pastries and I would go, I traveled for business, and I can assure you that in the 70s and 80s, you could travel for business, but it was hard to be a vegetarian. I'd literally have to go into a restaurant and say, well, I can see on your menu, you're serving lamb chops with asparagus. Could you just hold the lamb chops, give me asparagus? And I see you have also have broccoli over here and maybe some carrots. Could you just put all that on a plate? And people will be like, what are you going to eat? But that's how I managed. But, it wasn't great. It wasn't organic. Nobody even thought of organic, but I would come home. I had an organic garden and I would have my like 5 meals a week at home, but the rest of the time I was traveling. So I wasn't the healthiest vegetarian on the planet. And in fact, when I was out traveling, I'd go to Wendy's with the gang, let's say my working people, and I would have everything but the hamburger. I'd have the bun, white bread, special sauce. So, I mean, it was ridiculous, but I didn't really grasp how bad it was until I got this diagnosis. So, and the other thing in my life was I suffered from constipation for many, many, many years, and it was a work in progress still. So then I find a lump, and I'm thinking to myself, well, this is really weird. And I talked to my friend, the acupuncturist. She says, well, why don't you get it checked out? I went and got a mammogram, but I had lobular carcinoma. Well, lobular doesn't really show up in a mammogram. So they were guessing. And the doctor who was looking at the mammogram was a very like hysterical type. And she's going, oh my God, we got to send you to the surgeon right away. So they sent me to a surgeon. All my doctors were women, but this surgeon was a man. And I had no experience to understand that I did not have to have him as my doctor. So he tells me, oh, well, if it is breast cancer, we'll give you a lumpectomy. It'll be great. So I thought, oh, great. I'll save my breast.
Excuse me, and how old were you then? Excuse me.
Oh, yeah, I was 44, at the brink of 45.
Okay.
And it was very odd because, he said, do you have any questions? And I just thought, how could I have questions? I don't know anything about it. There's no internet. I didn't know anybody with breast cancer. I didn't know anything about cancer, except it was something my grandmother whispered behind her hand,
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't ask anything because how could he not tell me what I needed to know?
Mm-hmm.
And that was wonderful. So I go to the lumpectomy unprepared. But the night before, so this was a Thursday, they set up surgery for Monday. So I understood that I had the worst case of breast cancer ever heard of because it was only a 4-day interval. And I used to understand that if you needed surgery, I had to wait. So here it is 4 days later, right? So Sunday night, Saturday, I went to work Friday. Saturday, my husband and I lay in bed and I'm lying to him saying everything will be fine. Meanwhile, saying to myself, this is my last Saturday on earth and I'm only 44. And then Sunday night, out of nowhere, this woman calls me 8 p.m. and she says to me, you don't know me, but I'm a 10-year breast cancer survivor. Wow. To this day, I get goosebumps all up and down my arm because she saved my life. I was going in there thinking, this is my final farewell to the planet. And she said 10 years. I said, hey, I can do that too. Why not? And I went in with a completely different mindset, believing with all my heart that I would survive. And I don't know about your experiences or your audience, but I feel like there were a lot of klutzy moments, So one thing I discovered, really serious thing, I was scheduled for a 10 a.m. surgery. You have to get there at 7 a.m. And then they didn't take me in until 2 p.m. Yeah. So I had this 4-hour hiatus in which no drinking, no eating. And I was in a freezing cold hallway and there was nothing, there was no one to talk to. I was in the hallway and outside a surgical suite, but nobody asked me anything. And I couldn't grab anybody. I need my glasses and I need them to see. It was very awkward. And then afterwards, I discovered that the doctor had taken lymph nodes. No one mentioned to me that lymph nodes, I didn't know anything about them. He says to me, oh, you'll be happy to know they're all negative. And I said, well, I'm not sure what you're saying. And he says, well, we took 18 lymph nodes, but they're all negative.
Oh my gosh.
This is in 1993. They didn't hear about this. There was no sentinel node. That was to be decided later. But I said to him, well, what do you need that for? Why would you do that? And he said, well, we have to determine which type of chemotherapy we're going to give you. And chemotherapy in those days was either CMF or CAF. So it was adriamycin or not. And I said to him, well, that's funny because I don't think I should take chemo because I'm chemically sensitive. Well, that was, joke was on me because you can't get the lymph nodes back. And to top it all off, I'd had an injury to that arm, the left arm, and it showed up immediately in the form of lymphedema. I barely got out of the hospital before I had lymphedema of the left arm. It stayed in the forearm primarily, and it's still there, although it never got terrible. I was very, very careful about taking care of myself. And I became the lymphedema go-to hotline person at SHARE, the cancer nonprofit that I was involved with originally. Luckily, I found them and I went and sat in on support group sessions. So even though I wasn't doing chemotherapy, and I had a crazy incident with an oncologist, which I could share if you want, but going to the support group was really helpful because one of the women had an advantage in a weird way. Her father had had breast cancer. So despite her doctor saying, oh, it doesn't matter that your father had breast cancer. And I'm saying, wait, 10th grade biology, dad, mom, bring things,
Mm-hmm.
she said, I know things, and she knew things. So she said to her doctor, gee, don't cut the brachial nerve in my arm. So she didn't have a numb spot the way we all do, a numb area, right? And I said to my surgeon when we met again, why do you cut the brachial nerve? And he said, well, it might develop scar tissue, so it might get awkward, so we just cut it up front. And I thought, man, that's another crazy, insane thing. You cut it because you might have to cut it. It was just nuts. And so everyone has it. Therefore, all the surgeons were taught the same thing. Oh, it doesn't matter. It's not a human being. It's a person with cancer.
Right.
Boom. So no consideration of the person. And so, almost immediately I said, I better be an advocate because this is crazy. I mean, just complete disregard. And in so many ways, just absurd. And so hearing the stories around the room, we all got to understand that there were really important issues that they forgot to mention. And my doc forgot something that turned out to be really important to me because once you have lymphedema, it rarely goes away. And as an aside, it did go away from my left hand. It was in my left hand for 2 full years. I went to see an osteopath because I was following alternative medicine. In those days, there was nothing complementary or integrative. Every darn thing you did was considered alternative if it wasn't chemo, radiation, or surgery. So I saw an osteopath, and in a short period of time of doing her manipulation, she took the lymphedema out of my left hand. I'd had a bubble on my hand. One morning I woke up and I went to do some floor exercise. I look at my hand going, what? This gigantic, massive, liquidy with mush. It was horrible. And she took care of that. Never came back, but it stayed in the forearm, as I said. And I've had that now 29 years, which is a drag.
What you said is so important. When I talk to newly diagnosed patients, I said, you've got to be your best advocate. But the point is, when I was diagnosed like yourself, I didn't even know what questions to ask. And that was the thing. And your doctor, what frustrated me is that they really only tell you a little bit at a time. So you don't get the whole picture. And meanwhile, you're following their path kind of like a little lost sheep because you're just like, just get this cancer out of here and do whatever you have to do to me. But it's not needed. Like you were saying about cutting the nerve, thank goodness for advocates like you. Doctors don't think of that. Well, I guess if it's always done, we'll do it. But what's the effect on the patient?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because one of the things I've often joked about is they tell you tomorrow what you needed yesterday.
Right.
And it happens over and over again. And many of us have found that they don't answer your questions if they don't want to. You can ask a whole bunch of questions and they'll just stare into space and you don't get an answer. It's very frustrating. And again, I didn't realize that I didn't have to have this guy as my doc. But after the surgery and after his failure to identify the lymphedema, which I showed him 3 times, and he got a fee for that, every time I went, he got paid. But he said, oh yeah, your arm is, oh, your hand is swollen. Oh, your chest is swollen. Nothing about what it could be. And I found out because I read it in a newsletter of another breast cancer group. And I was really upset because they said it was forever. I was really upset. I mean, I'd been putting ice on it. I thought, yeah, it's going to go away any minute. And of course, it never did. So yes, understanding things. But now it's easier because we have the internet. You can access advocacy groups and you can find out the facts that you need to know. So once I realized he hadn't told me what I needed to know, I switched surgeons. And I went with this woman who was lovely to me. We're still friendly 29 years later. I see her sometimes at the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium, and we're always happy to meet. And she was, she was just very kind about everything. When I asked her for specifics, she did whatever I asked her, not, doing what whatever. For example, I had recurrence. You may know I had many tumors on the left side after my original lumpectomy. Because I had invasive lobular cancer. Doesn't show up on the scan. It doesn't show up on the mammogram. And nobody knew, including this the first doctor who did not do a biopsy. So he didn't know. Maybe he would have known if he did a biopsy. I don't know that for sure. But he would have known it was lobular. And he might have suspected what they call, I forget the word, but disease was everywhere in the breast. So it was growing slowly from the dietary changes. I became a vegan. I stopped fooling around with junk food. End of story. I never had any more cake. I didn't have anything like that again. I was careful and I tried to be organic as fully as possible. I learned about dietary supplements. I started adding that. I exercised for an hour a day. And I had a mindset of, I'm not going to die of breast cancer. That's not going to kill me. I'm going to find a way. And I found a way, obviously, 29 years later. But in the interim, I had tumor after tumor after tumor. So I had, in the end, I ended up with 9 tumors in the breast.
Wow.
They were probably all there, but they grew slower and slower and slower. So they came a little bit at a time. And then I had a mastectomy, and my female doctor took my breast off. They wanted to do a salvage mastectomy right away. And I said, it sounds, I want to do what Anne Fonfa needs. I want to do the norm. But if I probably should have had a mastectomy really soon, but I didn't. Anyway, after the mastectomy, I had a big breast. They took a lot of tissue, but some of it was still breast tissue because there's no difference, as you know, between breast tissue and tissue.
Right.
So I developed tumors on the chest wall. And this was 1997. So showing it to 2 oncologists, they said to me, oh, you have stage 4. And I said, wow, I have stage 4? I don't think so. And one of them, I said, I don't think you're talking to me. And what I didn't realize was they have to do tests. They're supposed to do a bone scan. They're supposed to do whatever. Nothing was done. They just said to me, oh, well, actually, what did the guy said? It's probably stage 4. So I said, well, what does probably have to do with this? And he said, well, it may have gone through your body and come out again on the chest wall. This is actually a common thing, but no tests, no anything. And so I just had to reject that on my own. And I fully rejected it. And obviously that was wrong too, because here I am. And, I eventually had a bone scan because in 95, I had a bone scan because I went to a clinic in Mexico because I kept having these tumors. And they said, oh, your bones are fine. So that was good. But this is 1997. I didn't really want to have another bone scan, and I didn't do one for quite a while. Mm-hmm. So then what happened? In December of 1998, I went to the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium for the first time. And unbelievably, I met Dr. George Wang, who is the Chinese herbalist who I proceeded to work with for years and still do, or again, I do. And so he said to me, I think I can help you. Now, I had my friend who was an acupuncturist, so, there was some validity to this because she talked to me about herbs and everything like that. So when I got home, this was December, January, February, March. In April, I had developed a 25th tumor, the 14th on the chest wall. And I said, oh, this is it. I got to go see this guy because nothing's really working well enough, and I couldn't do any more surgery. My lovely woman surgeon said to me, we can't take anything else off. You don't have any skin left. You won't be, and I can't do skin graft, chemically sensitive. So I was like in a box there. So I went to see him and he said, look, I'll give you herbs. I think they'll help. So I went to Chinatown. I bought the herbs. I was very excited. I cooked them. I made myself a tea. I drank the tea. I got hives over every inch of my body.
Oh my gosh.
He had said to me, look, you got to stop doing everything you're doing. And I said, no can do. That kept me alive all these years, 1993 to 1999. So I didn't want to stop doing it. And so I had a very, very strong reaction. And of course it was very upsetting and I was very nervous and oh my God, I have hives. I went to a dermatologist because everybody knows you go to skin doctor. And she said to me, oh, I'll give you antihistamines. And I said, by the way, I've had a double mastectomy by now, two mastectomies separately, actually. Oh, and by the way, I had a terrible reaction to my first lumpectomy done under general anesthesia. I didn't sleep for 6 nights. So every other surgery that I had was done locally, including 2 separate mastectomies. It's doable. It's doable. It was doable. It was not, they make it so you don't feel anything, except a little tugging, but I got through that. Anyway, so she says, oh, antihistamines. She gives me 2 prescriptions. I go to the drugstore, I fill it. I take the daytime one, I'm fine. The nighttime one, I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't breathe. my chest wall is really, really tight, which it's tight after mastectomies anyway. And I had told her, and she said, oh, I know all about it now. So nobody said, hey, your chest wall is going to get tight from the drug. I woke up like 4 a.m. I go to sit in the living room and say to myself, should I wake up my husband and tell him that I'm dying, or should I let him sleep a little longer? Anyway, obviously I didn't die. I recovered from the hives in 3 days. And at that time, I recognized that the symptoms of my chemical sensitivity, instead of being a massive, long-lasting headache, was like throat clearing. I wasn't choking or anything, and I didn't have mucus there. I was just going, and I would feel better. I mean, the headache would last like 10 minutes and it would go away. So that was astounding. You know, I didn't have any of, and then I wrote in my notes at the time that the intensity of it decreased by like 65%. So I was a new person, you know, I could go places and have a life completely different than, you know, my having to call ahead anywhere is going and say, please don't have anybody with fragrance in the room. Please don't have any potpourri. Don't plug anything in. Well, those are the worst things on earth, you know, and anywhere I went, I had to like, or if I went out with friends, they'd say, don't wear anything. Don't wear any personal fragrance. I won't be able to meet you. You know, don't come to my house wearing anything. I still have to say that because I can't stand the stuff, but it doesn't make me incredibly ill for 3 days as it used to. So this happened from the very first dose of the herbal tea. Now, Dr. Wang says to me all the time, it had nothing to do with my tea. Okay, but it must have. So he tells me he can't help people with chemical sensitivity, but it helped me. That's all I have to say. It really changed my life. I have a more or less normal life since then. But I do carry a mask with me everywhere. I mean, nowadays people used to mask, but back in the 90s and the 2000s, I had a mask on the airplane. I had a mask in a room with people because somebody was always wearing fragrance I didn't want to smell. Regardless of how little it affected me, it still was enough to make me not want to do it. So the herbs, I took the herbs, I had an MRI first because I wanted to prove something. I mean, my whole thing was I tried all sorts of stuff over the years, all sorts of alternative medicine, and I wanted to prove something, you know, if I could. And so I had the MRI, I took the herbs. He told me after 10 months that I could stop. And I said to him, well, it's been so many years, I just don't feel comfortable stopping. I'm going to keep taking them for a while. So I took them for 4 more months. And he said to me, no, you have to stop. You're okay now. So I stopped, had the MRI, and it said no evidence of disease. Now, you and I know, here's the issue with this. What we have as ways of checking, it's not fabulous. It's not like perfect. It's not, wow, we know every cancer cell is gone. I mean, clearly I didn't think though either, but this was good. I was in good shape. So I just kept up with my protocol. I kept up with my supplements. I kept up with exercise, although I wasn't doing an hour a day anymore. And, you know, I kept up with my mind over matter thing, you know, I'm going to heal myself, whatever. And that went great for years. About 4 years ago, I want to say 5 years ago, maybe, I started to develop more little tumors. They were always tiny, more tumors, but this time
chest wall again?
On the chest wall along the scar. And that was something that was, you know, an issue years ago, you know, that they always said, oh, it's going to, if it comes back, it's on the chest, on the scar. Well, now it was on the scar. And I didn't do very much. I didn't think anything of it, which was kind of stupid. And it, you know, tightened up in certain areas. And now I'm working with it. But the kicker, as you mentioned in the beginning, I got this little lump in the left groin called the inguinal, left inguinal. And I didn't think anything of it. You know, my lymph system's messed up on the left side because I've had lymphedema for 20, at that time, 26 years, 27 years. So, but it grew and it kept growing. So finally I went and had a biopsy, and they biopsied it to be follicular lymphoma, which is a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You know, I was very surprised because I take care of myself. How could this happen again? It was explained to me that follicular lymphoma is a disease of people who are sensitive to chemicals. And the most people who get it, not everybody, but like if you're a gardener and you spray Roundup, and I don't care if they sue me over that, Roundup is terrible. You should never use it anywhere. And so, you know, but me, I had a sensitivity to chemicals. I mean, I was joking this morning with a friend of mine. We were taking a walk in the park, and we have very low water levels right now where I live. It hasn't rained, hopefully tomorrow. Hasn't rained in a long time, and the water level's low. And I can smell the mush, the sink of the swampy stuff in the lake. So, you know, I'm holding my nose while we're walking by, and she says, oh, I can smell it too. But to me, it's an intense and painful smell because that's how all smells are. They're too much. You know? Anyway, so here I am. I have follicular lymphoma, and I tried for 2 years every alternative treatment that I ever heard of that works for, you know, serious cancer. And nothing worked. And
Excuse me
during that
one more
whole
time. And so that was not related to your breast cancer, right?
no,
Totally
no,
a new type of
completely
cancer.
new and completely different.
Okay.
And surprise, a surprise. And so after 2 years of trying everything, I went to Mexico again to the same clinic I went to twice before for breast cancer. And they gave me a treatment that really made a difference. However, it like ruined me. I lost a lot of weight in a short period of time. I lost my energy. I had to learn how to exercise again. My skin lost its glow. I got older in a very short period of time, like 3 weeks. And it was scary. I came home and
What was the treatment?
it's called Coley's toxins. It's a
Oh,
bacteria.
yeah, I know what
And
it is. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it was first I was injected in the tumor. I had it IV. Every single time that I took it, I had to be rescued by oxygen. I had to lie there for a long time. I shook. You get the shakes, you get the chills. It's like having the worst flu in the world.
Well, it
And
causes a fever, right? That's the thing they're trying to
yeah,
do is to
it's a
activate the.
short, it's a short-term infection. And so the nurse had to sit with me for an hour because I was shaky and I was, just really, really sick. And I had oxygen for an hour after each treatment, but it was shrinking the tumor. I mean, the very first, I took a picture of the tumor, before, thank goodness, cell phones. I took a picture of the tumor before the treatment and then after, and everyone could see that it shrunk in a 2-hour period. I mean, it was quite amazing. So
Wow.
I wanted to do it. And they thought I was so strong that I could do it every day. And I did it every day that I was there for 3 weeks, except the first day and the last day. And the last day I said to them, don't give it to me because I got to get home and I got to function. And I can't function when I have this treatment. But it took the tumor basically away. Then I get home, tumor comes back with a roar. And now everything I've tried, and I tried more stuff, didn't work. So then I contacted a hematologist and she and I have this conversation and she says, well, we give chemo and a monoclonal antibody and Benadryl and steroids. So I said, well, hold the chemo. Again, chemically sensitive, I don't want to do chemo.
Right.
So we negotiate and we agree that we'll start the monoclonal antibody, the steroids, and the Benadryl and she'll start the monoclonal antibody at half dose, just in case. Okay, so we agree. I come to the clinic, and of course she's on vacation. Who hasn't had that experience?
Yeah.
We meet up with the doc and they go away. So I sit down in the chair and this male doctor comes over to me and he says, well, we can't do that. That's a ridiculous plan. You have to have the full dose. So I said, no, I can't have the full dose. I mean, my doctor and I talked about it. And he said, well, you're going to die. And I said, well, if I'm going to die, I think I'm going to go home. And I left because no one tells me I'm going to die. And I'm going to sit there and let him tell me that.
No.
And he had 3 nurses with him and they're all telling me you're going to die if you don't do this treatment. I said, no, I'm going to go die at home. So I went home, and then 2 hours later, the nurse who works with my doctor calls and says, come back, we'll give you the plan. So I go back and they give me, and now, again, I got back on the herbs. I had told Dr. Wang that I was going to take the treatment and he prescribed new herbs for me, totally different flavor. I mean, I could tell the difference and everything was, and I had no harms at all. I don't think I was a little sleepy because the Benadryl makes you sleepy, And then over time, I said to the doctor, do I need the steroids? Because, could we take a smaller dose? And she says, oh, you don't even have to have it. Okay, great. So I stopped taking the steroids. And then recently I said to her, do I need the Benadryl? Because, I think it's putting me to sleep and I don't need to be asleep.
Right.
I'm not, so we stopped the Benadryl as well. So I'm just doing monoclonal antibody. So that was great for about 9 months. There's no cure for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You go into remission and you hope you stay in remission. So I had wonderful reduction of the tumor during that time period with no harms, except being a little sleepy here and there, and then it started coming back. So right this minute, I have 2 tumors in the similar area. They're both in the groin area, but not in the exact spot where the first one was. And right now we're trying a different monoclonal antibody. And it's not fantastic the way the first one was. But it's the one that everyone I've spoken to with this disease has said worked for them. Okay. So I'd had a newer version, which worked for a while. And now I'm taking the older version, which, okay, it's not roaring back. And that's the important thing because it roared the first couple of years. It was, just tremendous. In the interim, the breast tumors are there and they spread a little bit. So I started using a coconut oil carrier for frankincense. and
Ah,
putting that onto the area. And my acupuncturist, I asked to do a treatment that my original friend, the acupuncturist, who was my friend first and then an acupuncturist, and this guy down here in Florida treated me the way she did, with needles around the tumors to stop blood vessel development so it doesn't get, none of them ever got big, they're all small. So I'm working with that. I'm now, trying to make things work. Not in any pain at all. I lost some weight, but I've more or less gained some of it back, and I feel fine. Have normalish energy. Sometimes I lose my appetite. So in order to counter that, I've started getting some organic food delivered that's already made, so I don't have to cook.
ah,
I'm not a
well,
cook.
yeah,
I'm not that kind of person. Somebody else cleans my house and I leave because I don't like the smells, even though it's biodegradable and fragrance free and everything else, I can still smell it. So, but I've worked things out. So it's a work in progress, like most of us. There's a new treatment coming down the pike. They say FDA hasn't approved it yet, which is supposedly more impactful. And I'm hoping that gets approved and then I can try it. Otherwise, work goes on. We help people. The same things that help me have helped lots of people. Why not? I always said I'm not special. I've been lucky, but I'm not special. The things that I do always can help other people. Why not?
but you work hard at it and you give to other people, you share your information, which is so valuable. Because what always, I guess, gets at my heart the most is you see these young mothers with two little kids hit like a deer in the headlights. They have no idea what to do. And thank goodness
Yeah.
there are resources. And so your website, we should talk about that, because that is just a plethora of information. The biggest thing I think we need to get over in this country is that we need to clean up our food. And we just are so behind Europe and other countries, Australia. They know, because they have socialized medicine, they have a vested interest. But one thing that always struck me, I was a fifth grade teacher, and we'd be in the teacher's room and I would say, why are 8 and 9-year-old girls getting their menses? Why?
Yeah.
There's something wrong with this picture. Basically been something that you've been very active and very successful in getting change.
It's a really big issue, and a lot of groups are working on it. I don't feel like we've accomplished that much, but I have made people aware. The idea is, the reason that I say to people go organic whenever possible is because chemicals accumulate in our fat cells.
Right.
The thinnest person on earth has fat cells, and so they got chemicals. And then that's been tested. I mean, there's been studies in which women have donated breast tissue, and they find many chemicals. I mean, even in the umbilical cord, they found 200 chemicals, 200 chemicals. Wow. And none of them have been tested for safety, because in the US, they don't test chemicals for safety. They're either approved because they were already here, grandfathered in, they call it, or we have to prove they're unsafe. And that's really hard to do because of the way studies are conducted and the funding for them. Very hard to get funding if you're not a big, a big company or a big pharma or big ag. They got the money and they can block it too. And they do. So yeah, Europe and other nations are ahead of us in that, because they've recognized that prevention, which I like to call risk reduction, really, because there's no guarantee, but risk reduction is the answer to things. It is not letting it happen and then treating people, which is what we do here. And it's insane. And of course, each state has separate rulings. So you go crazy about that. You have to find the insurance rules for your state and work within them. There's some studies, I was telling my friend this morning, there's some studies that the states that went with it in enhanced Medicaid, people are getting better treatment and they're healthier. Access to health care and they're getting healthier. How could this happen?
Right.
Now, Florida, where I live, is not have the enlarged Medicaid, and people are not getting healthier here. And, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous. There's no good excuse. So our website, we provide the basics. We show people what healthy food is and why good nutrition matters, why physical activity matters. There are thousands of studies on that. And doctors are just beginning to discuss that with patients. I mean, it was always considered so out there to do things like that, but there's thousands of studies and they're not aware of it. So what I would like to see from a doctor's office is awareness of advocacy groups and a little handout that says, oh, you're a mother with young children, here's a group that works with young mothers. Right. Oh, you're over 75, here's a group for older people, whatever. Just, here's African-American women, here's your group, because some people like to segregate. and be separated and be in their own group. And I understand that perfectly. I mean, or here at Latinas, there's a group for you and so on. And it should be. And because there are, but docs don't tell their patients. I've heard many women, I've seen them on Facebook and, saying, oh, I don't know what to do. There's nobody to help me. And in fact, there are. And, so I try to tell them that. But an interesting thing happened. My organization was exhibiting virtually at the Living Beyond Breast Cancer conference. And one of the things that came with the exhibit was a chat box. So people were allowed to come between, or suggested to come between 10 and 11 a.m. So I'm there with two of my board members, and we start chatting because I say, first I say, hello, welcome, blah, blah, blah. But then I say, did you know about nutrition? And I say, put in some studies. And one of my board members, Shona Levy, who's a nutrition expert, puts in, I'll give some recipes. And then Suzanne Gavreau, who's a young woman with hereditary breast cancer and a lot of knowledge. And then she puts in something, and we talked about physical activity and why it's important. We talked about being in nature, finding ways to finding your joy, finding ways to be joyful and happy, and so on. So our chat was filled with all these great ideas. I don't know if people came that we didn't meet up with them because it was only a few hours we were supposed to be there, but I checked back and forth. People would read it. Other exhibits, and I'm really proud of this, the exhibits had hello, and that was the end of it because people didn't really come. It wasn't widely understood that there would be something of value, but we had something of value there. So I decided to save that page and put it on our website. Now, our website is no longer run by me. I ran it for the first 13 years, just me, posting every day when I found articles. The website got to be 8,000 pages, but it went down in 2012 and it never got to be the level that it was before. So now I use Facebook and I post there every day because that's easy to do. And I tell people, go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Annie Appleseed Project, and you'll see the latest studies and research. And there's always things, they're just small. But after a while, it's a preponderance of small studies and they make a difference. Now, why are they small? Because funding comes from big funders like Fonfa, and they have said to me at every conference I've ever been to, well, Ann, we can't patent that.
Right.
Wait, end of conversation. Yeah,
right.
From their view, but not from our view, right? We think it should be looked at. So it comes out of Europe, it comes out of Asia, it comes out of Africa. Other researchers, not US based, are looking at natural substances and natural things. And pharma is looking at ways to make those natural things into drugs, which they do. And then those drugs have help and harm because almost every pharma drug, not almost every pharma drug helps or hurts at the same time. And our human bodies are complex. So if you turn off one thing, you're turning off some other stuff that you don't want to turn off. Now, there's also the science of what they call epigenetics, which is what lifestyle changes can do to your genes. And that's very, very important. Your children aren't going to inherit that, but you can help yourself by making those lifestyle changes. Excuse me.
Until I took Project Lead, I didn't realize that you could turn an oncogene on or off by what you eat and what the chemistry of your body is. So it was sort of really eye-opening to me.
Yeah, it isn't discussed in the medical setting, and it should be. It should be. Now they're saying, oh, you can see the nutritionist, or you can go see, but it should be available right there at the doc's office. They have pamphlets. The pamphlet should be there. Here's some great things you ought to know. And let's say, one of the things that's been clearly shown for colorectal cancer, if you stop eating deli meat, you cut back or stop eating red meat, that makes a really big difference. Adding physical exercise for everybody. But for every cancer, if you eat more fruits and vegetables, less red meat, avoid deep fried, avoid deli meat, try and reduce sugar, read labels, stop hitting anything with chemicals. If I read a label, if I see something, I don't know what it is, I don't buy it. I want the freshest, most real food. I don't eat much packaged food. Most of my food is fresh. I have to shop a few times a week, but that's okay these days because they deliver, and it's doable. And it's much better. It's a much healthier way to live. They call it junk food because it's junk. It's terrible for us. It has no nutritional value. My grandson works right now. He's just turned 17 and he's been working at McDonald's for almost a year. And I beg him, don't eat too much. So he promised me not eating more than 3 times a week at McDonald's, which is tricky because, first of all, if it's very inexpensive, it can't be good. It just can't be. It's got to be low quality. It just is. So the other day I was listening to a talk on food. And one of the things they said was, McDonald's responded to demand and they put in a salad, but that salad costs twice the price of a hamburger. So People aren't buying it. And that makes sense because cheap sounds good and people don't realize that you're cheating yourself. And oh, and the other thing is food deserts. People live, particularly people of color and people of low income, live in what they call food deserts, where you're more likely to find 5 fast food stores than a supermarket. And the supermarkets in those areas cost more. I've priced it. They charge more. They have less produce. And 7-Eleven eventually got bananas at their front counter and apples. Great development because they didn't used to have that. Well, all you could buy is junk food. I was driving home from Orlando once from a meeting, and I stopped off in what they call Hee Haw Junction. I had to get gas and I had to get a bottle of water. So I went into the store, and again, I smell things much more strong than everyone else. So I smelled all the packaged deep fried foods, and they had deep fried everything like a state fair, deep fried Oreos and deep fried pork rinds, and just the whole horrible smell of the dried up plastic and the dried up deep fried food. It was revolting. And while I was there, paying for my bottle of water, a woman came in and had French fries and donuts, and she said, "Oh, here's my lunch." And I don't think she was joking.
Right.
So when you have something like that for a meal, you got nothing out of it. Zero nutrients, zero nutrients. I mean, nothing that would feed your body in any meaningful way. And people don't realize it because that information is like hidden. So another thing that I think of a lot, we have to certify organic. And we're always looking, oh, is it certified organic? Well, what should be certified is the non-organic, and there should be a sign at each of the stands that says these 4 pesticides were sprayed on this product. Did you want strawberries? Oh, did you know this, and that was sprayed? And they're all
Great
terrible.
idea. What a
And
great
then you know
idea.
better. Yeah.
Since the advent of packaged food, we've gone so far off the mark with eating real food. It's funny, we play trivia a lot, and one of the questions was, when was the first TV dinner invented? Like in the 50s, it was Swanson's TV dinners. And I remember as a kid thinking my dad was traveling and what a big treat. We were having Swanson's TV dinners tonight. You don't know what's in your food. And we have all these, because I was a retired teacher, all these children with chemical sensitivities. And you have to just wonder, if I just took him home and fed him real food, would he be okay? Because you see what they bring in, Dunkin' Donuts in the morning for their breakfast, and Lunchables, which are the worst possible thing. But I think that idea that labels something that's not organic, and these 4 pesticides were sprayed, and I've tried being vegan. I'm not that successful at it. I have a daughter-in-law who's amazing. She's an amazing vegan cook. And my husband won't do it, but I do eat all organic and I eat lots of fruits and vegetables, but it's hard work. How do we encourage young mothers to take the extra effort to say, it's worth chopping up these fresh vegetables for your children, or rather than give them a bag of potato chips or a donut? Like, how do you think we could go about doing that?
Yeah, well, it definitely requires discussion. I mean, it needs more than one time to be told. And we're unfortunate that the USDA policy, government policy, is to support the unhealthy foods, and they get a lot of discounts and deals and farm arrangements that they shouldn't have. And that has to be stopped. We don't do that. For your audience, if people want to know what the most sprayed foods are, there's a website called ewg.org. I'm sure you know about it, Environmental Working Group. And they show you the most sprayed fruits and vegetables and the least sprayed. So that if you couldn't afford to buy all organic, you can buy those that need to be organic because you've seen their list and know it's important. And I'm heartbroken that strawberries that are not organic are sprayed with 4 terrible, terrible pesticides, fungicides, things like, I mean, stuff shouldn't be in human bodies at all. And apples, you can see my logo, Annie Appleseed Project. We're all about apples, which are very healthy, but there's a lot of them are sprayed with really bad chemicals. And it's very unfortunate. And no thought is given to the amount of it. So teaching people to have their kids eat healthy, it's, you start somewhere. For example, my sister-in-law and I once had a conversation. She had a pile of candy on the kitchen island so the kids could just grab a snack. And I said to her, why don't you put out some bananas and apples out here and see what happens? So we switched it up, and she did. And the kids had the bananas and apples because that's what was there. It was very easy. And she said to me, oh, but the kids don't like vegetables. And they were 2 little boys at the time. And I said to them, okay, guys, no carrots today. I'm sorry, they're just for grown-ups. Well, they were hysterical to have a carrot, really.
Really?
So then I said, okay, you can have a carrot, but no broccoli. Well, they want broccoli because kids, psychology, it was easy. As soon as I said only adults, they wanted it. They
Hmm.
wanted to take part in that. They didn't want to be separated. So my mother used to cut up carrots and celery and cucumbers and put them in a glass with a little water in the fridge. And we would be able to go and take that as a snack anytime. It was a great idea. And she was not a cook. She made Swanson's chicken TV dinners. And not only that, she remade them. We'd have them the next night, not kidding. So, but we always had these carrots and cucumbers. You can start small.
Hmm.
You can start small, have a salad, have these available simple things. Carrots, kids like carrots. They taste good. They're fun,
Hmm.
and you can do things with them. And after a while, everybody gets in the flow of it. So, and by the way, being a vegan is not the important thing. It's choosing healthier options. The more fruits and vegetables you have, the better. Cut down on red meat, absolutely. You know, cut out deli meat. Yeah, do the best you can. It's not a good idea, and it can take time. I've given these talks for years, and sometimes people come up to me and say, "Last year, I heard you say." Don't drink soda. And we decided to quit as a family. Oh, great, that's fantastic. Took a year, but they did it. My own sister, she gave up sugar, added sugar. She's diabetic. Her life is changing. She's on different meds. She's less meds. It's just better. She's moved herself into a healthier position, and it can be done. And I'm really proud of that. I mean, I don't harangue people. I just give them the information and hope they'll hear it. The same, my stepson gave up soda. He gave up hamburgers. He eats hummus. He salad. The kids, that my grandchildren, they're teenagers now, but they'll tell me, Granny, that cereal you sent, that was the best. The organic one tasted better than anything else. So I can send that remotely now. It's fabulous. All these companies deliver to their door, so they have all this food I want them to eat. And
Hmm.
they like it. And they tell me all the time, that was better, oh, that tasted so much better than what, they can taste the difference. It tastes like real food to them. And they know when I'm around, they're going to have real food.
Have you noticed, like I've noticed, different vegetables that are organic are so much sweeter when you roast them than the non-organic uh,
I
ones?
haven't had non-organic in such a long time that I can't say, but I roast or steam my vegetables or have them raw, which I like also. I like to cut them up in little pieces and put some kind of sauce. I like spice. I like herbs, spices. Herbs are very healthy. Spices are very healthy. I throw that into my food and I like that. I like strong flavors. Um, this is a thing. My sister doesn't like any spice at all. And sometimes we joke, that we're not really related. And
Hmm.
I mean, there's nothing that's too spicy for me. I like ghost peppers, I like them all.
Yeah, I like to make sriracha mayonnaise for my
There you go.
veggies. That's what I do, and I make these sweet potato burgers. That's sriracha mayonnaise is awesome with it. So
Great. Well, I wouldn't mind an organic cook moving next door. That hasn't happened so far. So actually, what I really want is an organic Indian cook because I love Indian food, but that
mhm.
hasn't happened either, and unlikely.
Well, my side job is I've been in the travel business for a while, and so I host on cruise ships. So I am always the challenge in the dining room, and they've just decided they just bring me Indian food every night, and it works fine. Yeah, and it's always good, lots of lentils and veggies, roasted veggies and things. So, but it's kind of funny. It's kind of
There's a
funny.
cruise called Holistic Health on sea or something like that, at sea, I think, out of Miami.
Huh.
Holistic Health. It's Sandy Pukel, Pukel, is the guy who started it. They still have it, but I don't think they're cruising now, but they're doing a virtual. And they have just really interesting lectures and things like that.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, they always held it about when my organization held our conference, so I've never gone. But I think it's really cool for people who like cruises. You get really, really interesting. There's yoga cruises too these days and things like that.
I could name numerous cruise lines. The most cost-effective one is Celebrity. They have a spa cafe they're not organic, but they do fresh squeezed juices every day. So I got my green juice every morning. They always have a vegetarian and vegan option all the time.
Great. Yeah, that's
But
great.
but it's taken a long time. You're not only busy with your own Annie Appleseed project, but you were also on the board of the National Breast Cancer Coalition, which is extremely important. And you also have been a advocate reviewer for the DoD, which thanks to you, I was able to experience as well, which I
Good.
loved doing.
Yeah, that's great. Well, the National Breast Cancer Coalition works on legislative issues. So right now, starting April 30th, and people can still sign up. We're going to, I can't go to the conference. I'm immune challenged with my blood cancer. I can't really go anywhere. But April 30th, they'll be in Washington, D.C. The lectures are all about legislative policy and science and what's needed for breast cancer. So the big push that we have right now is for Metastatic Breast Cancer Access to Care Act. And the idea is to reduce the waiting time. Anyone who's ever tried to get Medicare at a younger age knows you're supposed to wait 2 years. So that is because the concept is, oh, people will recover. But as we know, metastatic breast cancer, you can live a while, but you're not going to recover. It's the same like the blood cancer, not going to recover, but you can be okay. But, some people, they can't work anymore. And this especially affects younger people, and it's very problematic. So we want to get rid of the waiting period. It's already been done for ALS because they know those people aren't recovering either. But we're trying to extend it to breast cancer. So if you, wherever you live and you're listening to this, if you're that you want to contact your representative in Congress and your senators and ask them to sign on to the Metastatic Breast Cancer Access to Care Act, that would be great. We're trying to do that. Now, if you live in Florida, I'd like you to contact me at Annie Appleseed Project. I'm sorry, Annie Appleseed PR at AOL.com, my email, and I will invite you to lobby with us on May 3rd. We have a couple of appointments of reps we're going to virtually do because I can't be there in person. Some of the people are there from Florida, of course, and we're going to ask our reps in person to sign on because this is really, really important for people. I mean, there's a tragic story of a friend of mine who's on the board, Joanne. Well, not on the board. I think she's what they call a team leader. Joanne's daughter had metastatic breast cancer and was pushing, for the act. And the daughter had applied for Medicare. It's almost 2 years, and she died the day before her 2-year period expired. The day before. So Joanne has devoted her life to, she's devoted her life to getting this law passed because her daughter, it would have been amazing for her daughter who didn't have access to it. It's very poignant. And this is, it's not the only story in the world, but it's a real thing. And so if we can get this done, and that's the things that the National Breast Cancer Coalition tries to do. And they helped establish the Department of Defense Breast Cancer Research Program, which expanded into a lot of different areas. And now there are many research programs sponsored through the Department of Defense. It has to be reauthorized every year. That means the money has to be granted again, over and over again. But it happens. We work on that too, as I'm the Florida field coordinator, so as a volunteer, of course.
So you have to petition for that money to stay in the DoD budget?
Every year, it has to be reauthorized by Congress. And it requires, there's a letter of support that goes around. And in Florida, we're okay with, a lot of our congressmen sign on, Congress people sign on both sides of the aisle, because, is cancer an issue of politics? It shouldn't be. It's right. Everybody gets cancer. And right now, Governor DeSantis' wife is suffering with breast cancer. She was just diagnosed, and she's got to be young, fairly young.
Yeah, she's in her 40s because I've read about her, but you haven't really heard much about it. And I know they have 2 young children.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's in treatment. I'm sure she's having chemo right now, but it's not being talked about. But that's fine. It shouldn't have to be talked about. Right. But so the kinds of things that I want to do is show people that whenever you're diagnosed and whatever your treatment plan is, you can always do complementary medicine. So doing integrative oncology or complementary medicine means that it's along with treatment, because that's your best bet to reduce the risk or prevent the harms. Everybody gets harmed from treatment. I mean, that's the terrible truth. Some of us recover sooner than others, but everybody's harmed. I mean, nausea and vomiting, okay, but that's terrible. And the medications don't work as well on women as they should, particularly on redheaded women. Don't ask me why. I mean, born redheads, but if you can take some actions, they're simple, they're basic, but they can make a difference. On our website, annieappleseedproject.org, we have a handout section, and it's on the top-down menu. Find it, download the handout, find some ways to do it. They're evidence-based. They've been shown not to interfere with treatment and to help people. It's such a simple thing. Every doctor should do it, but you know what? They're paid by pharma, they're trained by pharma. They just don't think of it. It just doesn't occur to them. Sometimes they'll say, oh, we weren't able to control this problem with the drugs we have. Oh yeah, hello, you could try something natural, just combine it because it may help. I
Right.
mean, I happen to know after 29 years, I happen to know it really does help. Thousands of people have told me that they got a benefit from the things that we've suggested. So I say to everybody, don't suffer in silence. Don't just do the basics. Don't just do chemo. Don't just do radiation. Even surgery, we have little tips for that.
Mm.
A classic thing would be, for example, if you go into surgery, there's something called arnica. You can put it under the tongue and it helps reduce the bleeding, bruising, and swelling that's caused by surgery. Or if you sprain your ankle, you could use it. It's also going to be topical. It's a plant that grows all over the world, indicating its value in nature. And there's a lot of studies on that too. So everything we do is evidence-based. I never tell people not to do stuff, but I always say do more. And finally, I want to say we have an annual conference, which has not happened the last 2 years, but we planned it for February 23rd to 25th, 2023. Takes place in West Palm Beach. Speakers come from all over the world. The audience comes from anywhere they want. And we serve only organic food. And people learn amazing things. They make great friends. They really make connections that matter. They hear things that matter. And it's a very meaningful experience. We all feel safe and protected and understood and connected, which is very, very important. And that information will be up on our website maybe mid-August or so. We'll have the first little bit in the next couple of weeks where we list the speakers and their website connections so people can see more about them. Registration will probably be open August or September. And our plan is to we don't charge for anything that we do except the conference, because you can't throw a conference with food and without
Right.
money. We don't pay our speakers. They don't get an honorarium. They volunteer their time because they want to talk to you. If you come to our conference and you get information, that's of extreme value. And do with it what you will. But that's the point of the conference. And it's going to be fabulous. February 23rd to 25th.
I'm so excited you're going to do it next year.
It's warming up most places right now and people are happy, but remember, winter, it sucks, February, maybe 70, 75. You'll like it. Be worth it. Great
So
food too.
Everybody visit her, Anne's website, annieappleseedproject.org. And I can tell you from personal experience, the conference is dynamite and amazing. And the other thing too that we sort of underestimate a little bit is that just networking with other people that are in your situation, and you make friends and you keep in contact with those people, and just to be with people that are doing the same thing you're trying to do and to support each other, I guess, is the thing that we really, need to pay attention to. But
yes, support's really important. The other thing I want to say is we have a YouTube channel, so you can see some of the talks that were given at prior conferences. And there's plenty of interesting material. And our Facebook page, Annie Appleseed Project Facebook page, all valuable information every single day. New studies, new articles, new testimony, new recipes, a lot of good ideas. Love to see everybody. Ask me any question you want. I'm available through our website. And, I mentioned my email before. I like to help people.
yeah, I know you do. You help me a lot. So
Thank you.
So thanks so much for your time, and we really value all of your input and everything you're doing. And we'll pray for you to continue to feel well and not to have any more issues. But I just thank you so much, and I thank you what you've done for me, and I know what you've done for a lot of others. So we'll have to come up with another subject to talk about, but I'm sure we can do that another time. So
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Anne, thank you so much, and stay well.